Nobody can deny that music has aged badly, corny beyond belief. You wouldn't want to be near a girl you like thinking about that music. Daytona, let's go away. I must be playing Daytona USA. It's been so long since this arcade racing classic appeared in game rooms, cinemas, and bowling alleys around the world. Even to this day, you can't avoid it. People who have no interest in video games would have played this at least once. But how did it all begin? It all started with Toshihiro Nagoshi in North America. After designing virtual racing, Sega wanted to expand on the racing genre, so he went to a NASCAR race. Now, I'm no American, but the thing with NASCAR is that it's very simple, mostly racing around an oval-shaped track where slipstreaming is a skill, which creates the excitement. Nagoshi understood the simple yet exciting concept and wanted to emulate it onto a video game. Released in 1994, this was one of the best, if not the best, looking arcade racer at the time. Although it had less polygons than virtual racing, they were fully textured so it looked incredibly realistic and was able to run on 60 frames per second. You could even hook up to 8 arcade machines. If there's one thing I've learned, it's the most fun with 8 players. This was the most used arcade machine as a kid. I remember there was a games room in town, and every single time I went in there, I would always play Daytona USA first. My dad would always have to, reach for the pedals because I couldn't reach them myself. It was a really long time ago. The biggest memory I have of this game is when I tried the expert track for the first time, and I messed up the chicane and couldn't turn around. I remember feeling really bad for my parents giving me the money to play it and persistently convincing them I can race this level and then wasting it after a few seconds. Being popular in the arcade, it was a matter of time when Daytona USA was going to be on home TVs. We'll briefly look into different ports, but we're focusing mostly on the one you can get right now, which is the 2011 remake. But first, did you know that it was originally meant to be released for the Mega Drive using the SVP chip that Virtual Racing used? I just want you all to imagine that for a few seconds. So moving it to a more advanced console was the better choice. Sega Saturn. This was released in 1995 as a launch title for the console. Presentation wise, it was certainly on par when you consider the system's limitations, and the gameplay and controls certainly make it a fun arcade racer. But you can tell it was rushed if the draw distance was the equivalent of a snow blizzard and it ran on 20 frames per second. This is when the Championship Circuit Edition came in to fix a lot of the parts that were unfinished and turn it into the Saturn port it should have been. Or maybe it was a scam by Sega. They did this by using a modified version of the Sega Rally Championship engine so the gameplay looks a lot smoother. It also has more tracks, cars to choose from, and gameplay features, with the addition of a day and night setting, so you're even tempted to call it a sequel. The music sounds more rock orientated. I like that, and it supports the analog controller. Playing this game with analog controls on the PlayStation 3, it's hard to imagine playing Daytona USA with a D-pad. If there's one criticism I have is that the presentation looks a lot less like the original arcade. You can notice that in the music and the new track designs. But if you have a Saturn, I'd say play this one. Home computer. Same port as the Saturn, except it's on a computer and the graphics are much better. It's weird to think how downgraded the graphics were during the 90s because there was one occasion when I played it on the PC and I never noticed it. Sega Dreamcast. Also known as Daytona USA 2001, this version came out in, ironically, 2001 and was known to be the hardest of them all. Daytona 01 was known to have controls that require the most practice because of its ultra-sensitive steering. Cars are so difficult to drive, some reviewers even summed up the controls as plain bad, although some say it was because Sega based the steering mechanics off Tokyo Extreme Racer 2 and it didn't convert properly into Daytona USA. You'll want to master it though because this version has the best graphics and the most tracks and cars to feature in any Daytona USA. Oh look, for anyone who thinks this game is sexist, you're wrong. If you're a Dreamcast collector, it's worth purchasing. Now for the feature presentation, the Xbox Live and PlayStation Network port. Here's where we go really deep into the features of Daytona USA. You have 3 tracks to choose from. One is obviously based on Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida, and the others are fictional but more challenging. I like how the track designs are over the top, even on the oval. I mean, compare it to the real life track. Then you choose your transmission, automatic or manual. Speed differs. The rest is self-explanatory. Wait, what happened to the ladies and gentlemen? The controls. Because they're exactly like the arcade, you're using steering wheel controls with a normal controller. You really have to be precise with the analog stick. It's seriously touchy. But at least I'm not using a Sega Dreamcast. The best way to control the car is to grab it by the scruff of the neck and drive it like an animal. Throughout the years, I've learned that power sliding through the corners are the way to go. You can change the 4 different views: in front, inside, outside, and out of the way. I recommend the interior view. The thing I really like about this version is if you have a steering wheel like the Logitech GT Force, it's compatible so you get the ultimate Daytona USA experience with HD graphics in your own house. Just expect the controllers to vibrate a lot because you'll get a lot of opponents crashing into you. They think you're one of those time trial ghosts because they have little concern for the human driver on the track. If you're on a racing line and one of those opponent drivers are in your way, you're always going to be on the receiving end. And trying to keep them behind you is pointless. They'll just go through you as if the opponent is part of the track. Speaking of track, sometimes they can glitch through that too. Oh well, you can always travel back in time if you screw up. The thing is, if you're only a casual gamer, it doesn't matter that much. It's a lot of fun just to muck around and race against the clock, especially on the arcade machines as a kid. It was a mission in life to beat that timer. But if you want to get first place on every track, every time, it's a real challenge. Having this at home, you're in luck, because this is when the extra features give you a chance to practice while keeping your pockets filled with change. Sega has introduced new challenges where you need to reach a particular top speed, get to a certain checkpoint, beat a rival, staying the same speed around a corner, and something as simple as a rocket start. Actually, it's not that simple. It took me ages to work out I was supposed to hold the brake at the start. But I have no one to blame but myself. These challenges do more than add variety. They actually give you legit practice on how to race on each track, and it feels so much easier after completing them. There's also survival mode in which you simply drive as far as you can. You get time extensions on whether it'll be going long distances without the brakes, staying on the tarmac, and going past the start line. Finally, with the arcade mode, you can select different types of races. Somebody should do a video of completing one of the endurance modes. I don't know anyone who uses the pits unless it was by accident, but it's optional and doesn't take away any of your time. On the Endurance and Grand Prix race types, you can change the tyre settings so they actually wear, requiring you to pit. But what I don't get is, if you're doing survival mode when tyres wear and you go to the pits, the time is still ticking. Why is it that when pitting is necessary, the time still ticks? Certainly ticks me off. For the record, it's challenging, but always encourages you to master it. Now, can anyone think of any racetracks with horses only a few meters away from the tarmac? Is it meant to be some kind of Easter egg relating to one of your sponsors? Apparently on the Saturn version, you can enter a code on the title screen where you can race as an actual horse. Also, you can make the statue of Jeffrey breakdance pressing X repeatedly. Now, look at this. Hey, I'm paying you to race. What kind of crap is that? Now, let's listen to that music again. Typical 90s Japanese cheesiness, but it adds to the charm of this game. If you really like this music, there's a karaoke mode where you can race on any track with question mark laps, select any song, and as you're driving, there's lyrics to the song on the screen as you sing along. That's really cool, but you won't be hearing me sing because 1, I'm a horrible singer, and 2, I want to talk about the graphics. Now I know I said the music has aged badly, but at least the graphics have aged really well. 3D graphics back in 1994 was only growing, so it's surprising to see it still look good even to this day. It's hard to explain the graphics in HD remakes. It feels like playing the same game as a kid, but it looks as if it was made yesterday. And just like the arcade, it runs on 60 frames per second. There's just so much to like about this game regardless of what arcade machine or console you're using. But with this remake, there's one thing that's really bugging me. Now I know that the Saturn and Dreamcast versions have more tracks like Desert City and Mermaid Lake, so why aren't they in the HD remake? I'm sorry, only 3 tracks! And the multiplayer. What multiplayer? And no, I'm not talking about the lack of split screen, which is bad enough, but the lobby is almost completely empty, so it's hard to find a race online. I bet there would have been more online activity if there were more tracks and cars. What Sega have done for the PlayStation and Xbox versions is stay extremely dedicated to the original 1994 arcade to a fault, and add as much polish as possible, which is why it's a 7.5 out of 10. You're getting your money's worth buying this game, but I just think that if they had the time to add more gameplay features and recreate HD graphics out of it, they could have added more tracks and different cars to choose from. I just feel as if there was more potential in this game that Sega just didn't take the opportunity on utilizing. But there's no question, the nostalgia I got racing these box-shaped stock cars was really satisfying. Anyone who loves Daytona USA but doesn't want to waste their change on the arcade machines should get this classic.
A new winner! Welcome to Victory Lane. You made it!
Oh, one last thing. Entering particular initials plays the music of older Sega games. 30 different jingles to choose from. Anyone recognize this? If you like this review, here are a couple of other Sega related reviews, or even subscribe.